All right, Jeremy. 3,
Mauricio.
2, 1, and we're back. And for this episode, I want to say a huge thank you. I want to say everything that could go wrong went wrong. Timing went wrong. Batteries died. Hopefully the recorder doesn't die. But I want to say a huge thank you for coming on. We've talked about it for a month maybe, about having you come on. And today is finally the day that I get to have the powerful Jeremy Royce.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to finally be here.
It's great to have you on, man. I wanted to have you on because of multiple reasons. A being, you were telling me a little bit about your story.
Yeah.
Of how you got to this point in life. And it caught me off guard, obviously, just because it was a long road with a lot of detours. And you actually told me something very interesting about traveling, of how you just dropped everything and just started traveling for a while. So tell me about it. Tell me about exactly what you did, what led you down this road.
Okay. So I'll just do a little bit of backstory before I jump into the travel. But I grew up in a little town up in Northern California, ended up leaving home when I was 16, and always was working, had 2 jobs, 3 jobs from that point on. Ended up in Santa Cruz after I spent some time in Oakland, went to Berkeley High, found myself in Santa Cruz, working, like 10 years, just trying to support myself. And then I finally got an opportunity to go to school, and the government helped me out, which was great. And I finished school and was like, man, what do I do now? I'd saved up some money. I always knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. It was just a matter of how I was going to get to that point. And I'd made a bunch of films in school and on my own. But when I finally graduated, a lot of people were like, oh, here, you should go travel, see Europe, go do something. And I had enough money that I could have gone and maybe spent 3 weeks in Europe or something, which would have been great, you know. But I realized that I couldn't bring my gear, and what I really wanted to do was make movies. So I set out in 2008 to move into a minivan, quit both my jobs, got rid of everything that I didn't need.
Yeah.
And pimped out this minivan to travel basically across the country I went to 30 states. This was right after Obama got elected. And I really just wanted to figure out what people were doing in the community, because he ran on this platform of change. Like, what are we going to do to change things, make things better? But I realized that so much of the change can't really happen at the level of the president. Obviously, they could make changes, but the real changes are going to happen in the communities that we're a part of. So I just set out to travel across the country and find people who are making change in their own community, whether it was through a nonprofit or some personal work. And I ended up making a web series for 6 months, did 30 states, was editing as I was traveling, posting up in coffee shops with my big ass camera at the time, because it wasn't like these little cameras anymore. It was a big camera with hard drives and sound gear and all of this gear. And I'd like roll into a town, find a coffee shop, set up my workstation, and then edit the videos I'd shot in the previous town while I'm trying to find new people to document. And it wasn't people who were obvious. I was trying to discover stories that nobody had really seen before.
Yeah. Which is just storytelling. That's basically what film is about, is storytelling. It's telling the story of that, or portraying something that you want the audience to see that normally isn't seen. Like you just said, what city would you say gave you the biggest impact?
Oh man, it's so hard. They were all different. A part of it, the whole journey, you know, I believe that there's like a higher power. And I felt every step of the way that when you wake up in a van on any given day and you could decide to drive to a different state or drive 800 miles across, you know, the middle of the country, it kind of opens you up to be spontaneous and figure out which direction you're going to be pulled in any given day. And I had a little bit of a plan. Yeah. But then I also opened myself up to, you know, divine inspiration or just a larger purpose. And I ended up finding these incredible stories in strange places. I was in Detroit right when the auto industry was basically going under and the government was stepping in to bail them out essentially. And I found this incredible group of guys who basically take kids who've gotten stuck in, you know, they were either in the juvenile justice system or they've been in prison or something, and they come out and they're in these communities that are just, it was Detroit in this part of town that was just completely demolished. Every other house was boarded up. And as a result, there's a lot of drug dealing, and there was crack houses on every block. And there was this one guy who decided that what he wanted to do is take some of these kids who'd run into trouble and teach them how to do something with their life. Specifically, teach them carpentry.
Yeah.
And then go into these communities, buy these houses that were like worth nothing because they've been destroyed, and then give the kids in the community a chance to rebuild the house, which does two things. First, it gives them employment, teaches them life skills. And third, it actually improves the entire neighborhood.
The community.
And those drug houses started getting boarded up and leaving town. So that was one of the cooler stories. I think it was about 40 different little vignettes on various people. So there's so many different amazing stories of cool stuff that people were doing. There was another guy in Texas who he had a daughter with Down syndrome, and he just realized that his daughter had nothing to look forward to. She wasn't going to have a job. She was basically going to be living at home without a real community to be a part of.
He was going to have to take care of her.
Yeah. And more importantly, she wasn't going to be able to connect with the people around her the same way. So he found a bunch of other kids, and he started something called Down Home Ranch, which is just outside Austin, where they take kids with developmental disabilities and they provide permanent housing in a community environment. So there's a bunch of people together all living with peers who they relate to, who are dealing with some similar issues where they feel not like they're outsiders, but they are part of the community and they were all equals. And that was awesome. And again, it was, Texas. That night he brought me in. His wife made me big dinner. They hadn't met me before, Texas, yeah. And people are just generous. People are generous everywhere. That was the one big takeaway. Every single place I went, I'm just some random kid who shows up out of nowhere, cold calling these people, half expecting them to tell me to, get the hell out of their business or their house or whatever. Yeah. And they just bring you in and want to share with you, because when you really get down to it, most people care about other people. Yeah. On a one-to-one human level.
It's just getting to know yourself, like getting to know the person that's taking the time out of their day to have a conversation with you. You get me? And that's a lot of it that it is in this community. A lot of people want change. Like you said, they want to be involved. They want someone to care about their kids just as much as they care about their kids. So you see that everywhere. You walk around and you talk to these people, and it's just, okay, I make a mental note. Okay, that person needs this. Okay, well, let me try to help them out. You get me? And for me, as I hear you talk about it, and it's like, that's kind of what this is all about. It's just getting those types of stories out there, giving platforms for people that are trying to do something, whether it's a nonprofit. It's like, hey, look, this is exposure for you, so you can then either help more people out or get the word out there, or just maybe funding, whatever it is. That's the whole point of this, is just because of the community. And I realize that just having conversations with people that have come on before, where it's just like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, really? That's cool. Okay, keep me updated. Let me try to help you out in whatever you need. So the more that I do this, the more that I have those experiences you're saying, but is slowly growing. You kind of wish it would grow faster, but it's just taking its time. When you're out there and you're doing these things and you're meeting these people, and obviously I personally would believe you would keep in contact with them. How many of those people do you talk to on a daily basis?
It's hard because obviously life happens. You get pulled in lots of different directions. I recently talked to one of the guys who I met in New Orleans. In general, a lot of these people have moved on from the organizations that they've been working in. That's one hard thing with nonprofits, is that it's sometimes not sustainable. Yeah. So I haven't stayed in touch with a lot of them, but what I did do is, over the course of this trip, every week I would be posting new videos, and whoever I did videos for before ends up tuning in and checking out the other stuff. But the real goal was never for me to stay in touch and build a community with these other people. I knew they were going to be doing their own thing, and most of them were super busy because they're all really ambitious, Yeah. The big thing for me is, if we could get more of those stories out to other people, then someone in another part of the country could be like, oh, I like that. I want to do that, but in my community. Yeah. So it's less about connecting, because at the end of the day, if you're not seeing people, if you're not running into them regularly, you're probably not spending a lot of time trying to stay up to date, just because there's a million people in our lives. Yeah. But if we can take an idea that someone else has and put that into our own community and build our own community up, then everybody wins.
So are all those videos on your website?
Oh no, they're all down. They don't exist anymore.
Really? You took all? Why?
Oh man, it's heartbreaking a little bit. Being a filmmaker, I started doing this when I was 16. I'm now 35, and obviously you get better. I now do it professionally. I'm a professional cinematographer, so I'm paid to go shoot stuff all the time. And the older, even videos just 5 years ago that I made, I'm like, oh man, what was that? Just because it's technically, and it doesn't reflect where you're at anymore.
Yeah.
And you always have to be catering your own, you have to protect your own image a little bit and make sure that only the best stuff is out there. So people who want to hire you see the best stuff. Yeah. I still have it all.
Man, that would be great to see. It would be great to have those people that maybe either get to know you from this, or someone in the future comes back and listens to this episode and says, oh, okay, I want to see that. Where can I go? You get me? Or maybe it inspires them to do some similar thing. I told you when we were off camera that the whole point of doing all of this is just create inspiration. Just create for something for someone to want to do, whether it's music, film, podcasting itself, art, writing a book, starting martial arts classes, or whatever it is. Like, that's what it's all about. But I think that people that listen to this, because a lot of the people that listen to it, I know really well. Yeah. And they're all going to ask me, hey, where are those videos? I want to see things like that. You get me?
It might make me actually go and recut a trailer or something for it. I'll consider that. I mean, all my work currently is on my website, but the good stuff, the recent stuff. But yeah, I'll go look, and maybe I could post, if nothing else, 1 or 2 videos, so if people are into it, they can see.
Or even splice it up. Yeah. Making one big thing.
For sure.
Have you ever thought of maybe looking back at your own life and saying, hey, look, documenting what I've always done in one video?
Oh man, it's hard because, the big thing with that is that started out as a web series, and it was really just about the people. And then when I finished, I came back and I'm like, how do I make this into a feature film? Yeah. Like a 90-minute, 120-minute film. And I realized that it's a completely different thing. You can't just take a bunch of shorter videos, mash them together, and make it into something that works in a longer format. I tried. It didn't work. What it really needs is like a personal through line. The only way that could have worked is if I had somebody filming me I was filming myself. I was doing this where like you set up
cameras
a camera,
and you can record yourself. Yeah.
But what they don't see is when all this stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because no one's filming that, because I'm like hustling, trying to make stuff happen. Yeah. When really, to have a successful film in that regard, you need to see those moments too. So I would have needed a bigger crew. If I were to do it again, I would do it with a bigger crew. And I still think it could be good. It could be a good model to go spread the word about because there's still awesome stuff happening. I mean, I just heard recently there's this grocery store that just opened up. It's through Salvation Army. And basically the food is like 30% the price that it would be at a grocery store. And then every week they have promos to bring people in. So one week they'll just give everybody a free chicken. Yeah. So you've got people in these communities who maybe don't have a lot of money, should still get good food. Nobody should be buying their produce from a liquor store. Yeah. But there's certain places where that happens. So there's still awesome things popping up all the time that deserve to be given more attention. So there's still room to do that.
How do you find out about all these things? Like for me personally, coaching the sports, that was just something that I grew up doing. Right. Because go to school, local community rec center, get involved into sports, decide to play. Oh, hey, there's an opportunity to coach, so on and so forth.
Just happens organically.
Yeah. But how do you figure out about maybe this store or this nonprofit over here? Is it just searching for it on Google, driving by, seeing signs? Like, how is it that these advertisements, I guess it would be kind of like, get to you personally?
Yeah. So at the time, the stories that were really easy to find, the organizations that were really easy to find were the ones that had already received a bunch of attention because they already have a good media presence. They've got people who've done stories on them already. And I really wanted to focus on the organizations that hadn't really been discovered yet. The really cool ideas that people would dig, and I wanted to bring awareness to them. So it took a little bit more work to find them. And the big tool that I used at the time, I don't know if it still exists. It probably does, but it was a website called Idealist. And it's just a collection of nonprofits that you could sort by keywords. So if you want to do something about, basketball, for example, you could search basketball on Idealist and then break it down within a city and discover nonprofits that focus or are somehow related to that concept within a given region. So I would show up in, I showed up in New York City. Of course, there's a million things there. So I go on the website and I start looking through thousands of nonprofits, figuring out which ones work. And you typically have to find 5 to 10 that you like because not all of them are going to get back to you in time. Yeah. I was only in the city for like a week. Maybe I contact them a week before. So that's still a pretty small window. So you reach out to a couple of them, and usually the ones I really like, I hound them a little bit more. Yeah. And just keep calling. Yeah. Then it became a question of, diversity too. Over the course of the series, I wanted to highlight different types of nonprofits. There's a lot of gardening nonprofits, which is great. You know, we need food. We all eat food, and we could all grow food on our own in our community. Community gardens are a huge resource, but I don't want to keep doing a show on community gardens over and over in different places. So I'd have to mix it up. And maybe in the New York one, I focused on these girls who have this nonprofit where they actually give people the tools to make hydroponic gardens in their high-rise lofts.
Yeah, where there's no space.
No
New York,
space.
there's no space.
Right. So they figured out a way to use old 2-liter soda bottles and stuff and build a hydroponic garden that just sits in your window, and you can grow all your lettuce, whatever you want right there without having to go to some park or something.
Yeah.
It's cool.
That's actually really cool. I think that for me, I would want to find those type of people, and that's the reason why I asked, is just because I want to have them on. I want to talk about things like that. But how does that end up leading to USC Film? Which is like the biggest thing for me, is just like, man, Jeremy, what do? You get me? Because we meet playing basketball. Obviously, because I've known the community so long, it's just like, oh, okay, I know everyone that's here. And it's like, who is this guy?
Why does he keep coming every day?
No, and it's just like, you see, people come in, people leave. You get me? And for the most part, a lot of the people that you've met now are just people that have been there for so long. Yep. So for example, we'll hang out with Ronald, who's he's supposed to come on. I don't know why he hasn't came on yet.
Where are you, Ronald?
Yeah, we're going to set something up for sure. But he's been there since like the early mid-90s.
Yeah, last night we were watching kids play, and he was telling me about how we were in the gym, and he was like, this gym used to be half the size. That brick wall used to be, we would just run into the brick wall 2 feet outside the gym. If he was like back in 92, 93, there's all this stuff going on.
I wasn't even born at the time. And I was like, Ronald, you're telling me stories of things that I could never even like imagine.
Right.
You get me? But the reason why I like having this is also because I like hearing stories.
Sure.
For me personally, stories is the biggest thing. I didn't grow up with grandparents. So at my old job, we used to have the owner's dad used to work with us, and then he retired, but he would always like come around, hang around. And whenever we would go do like Christmas gatherings, I would want to sit on his table, not because I didn't like sitting with other people, but mostly because if I sat there and he was eating, he would say a funny story.
Sure.
And those stories are the things that it would like get to me. It would resonate, because I wish that I would have my grandparents where I could talk to them. So when I sit with Ronald or maybe Kenny or people like that, they would tell me, I remember when this park, there used to be like really a hot park, gang violence. Now I see all these kids running around and it's fun. So I want to have him on so we could talk about things like that. But as we were there, Ronald would tell me, oh yeah, he used to play here in 06. Okay, that was before my time. Yeah, I remember when he was this and that. And then we saw you and we were like, who's that? I don't know. Oh, all right, cool. And then we just through sports, we got to know each other and everything. And when you first meet someone, at least for me, I don't have any care in the world. I no bias. You do what you do, and it is what it is. So then when I started asking, it's like, hey, look, what is it you do? And, oh, I do USC Film. Oh shit, really? That's awesome. And then when I did this, it's just like, well, now I want to figure out more about it, and I want to have someone in a different field. So when people listen to this, they say, oh, okay, he's a USC Film. Why should I listen to him? And then you told me the story, and I said, you definitely have to come on. Why? Because a lot of these kids that are in either recreational sports or that I meet outside I can't do it. You get me? I can't do this. I can't do that. It's too hard. It's this and that. And it's like, look, you have someone who went through the depths of hell and came back and now is successful, at least in your own right. You get me? You might not want to be braggadocious and say, oh yeah, this is what I do, but at least in your own right that you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, regardless of success or not. If I get to wake up in the morning and I get to make myself breakfast and have coffee, work out, be able to pay my bills and spend time with people I like, then that's success.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but with that said, it's hard because the world, I mean, like I said, when I was 16, I left home. My mom was dating a Norteño at the time, and there was threats against our lives, and my mom wanted to be with him, and I was like, peace out. Like, I can't, I'm not sticking around. But if you want to stick around, you do you, because it's your life. But I wasn't ready for that. And then, just trying to hustle and figure out being 17, enrolling yourself in high school and finding your own, not being able to get a credit card because you're not an adult.
You're not an adult.
And nobody will give you, you can't go to, at the time, Blockbuster and get movies because you don't have a credit card. And like, how do you get an apartment when nobody will put you on a lease? So you have to like all of that stuff. And honestly, that stuff is the best thing that ever happened to me because, and not like I had it all that hard. Also, I'm a white guy, so I got the whole world looks at me differently. I have a certain set of advantages inherently because of the color of my skin, unfortunately. But it is
what
truth.
It is. Yeah, it is what it is. And you can't be sorry for that. It's just what it is.
And you can't deny the fact that there are advantages. So I already had that going for me, but I had a lot of other stuff stacked up against me. And those challenges and the difficulties that you face are what really it sharpens you.
It molds you to what you are today.
And it forces you to really figure out what is it that I want to spend my life doing, because I see all this other stuff that I don't want to spend my life doing.
Yeah.
So what do I want to really do? And that's where the dreams come in, because honestly, it is not about talent and it's not about opportunity. It comes easier if you're talented and if you have opportunity and if you have money and if you have privilege and all that stuff. But all of that stuff is meaningless if you care and you're determined and you're persistent and you're not willing to give up. And most importantly, you work hard, because a lot of people in this world, they don't really work that hard, Yeah.
And the reason for that, a lot of it is just because it's fear of failing. A lot of it is fear of failing.
Absolutely.
And you talk to all these kids and it's like, I tell them all the time. That's why, personally for me, I think that's why the kids like me as much, is because the style of coaching has always been, look, I teach you the tools that you will need, but I don't tell you how to play.
Right.
When you get to that certain situation, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I could do this, this, or this, but that's because I have these skills. And that's how life is. You go through life and you're just like, okay, I have these set of skills. How can I apply them? But it's just, oh, maybe I don't have this skill. I don't want to go that route. And it's just fear. A lot of people just have fear.
I think it's fear of failing. It's also fear of success to some degree, because if you succeed, then you can't blame anything on anyone else. You have to be responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you've made it and something goes wrong, that's on you. If I have the world stacked against me and I don't make it, I could always be like, oh yeah, but the world's stacked against me. So, that's why. It's an excuse.
It's an excuse, yeah.
But if you really set out to accomplish something, there's nothing that you can't do.
Yeah. So like I said, that's why I wanted to have you on, just because all these kids can now listen to this and say, hey, that's another reason for me to try harder. You get me? So a lot of it is that I have my best friend we grew up together, came out and started talking about his anxiety. Give me how he gets anxiety attacks sometimes, how he feels, how he wants to, his methods of how he gets over it, and how he wants to start something to help kids that are in the same way. And it's just like, look, a lot of people don't talk about it. They're just afraid to talk about something like that. And it's just like, you have to put it out there, because then once you put it out there, the people will gather around you and they will help you get through it. So I think that people seeing you now, maybe they'll recognize you at the park, or they'll recognize you down the street, and they'll say, hey, look, that's Jeremy, and he went through this, and that motivates me to want to do it as well.
And also, I think it's important that people see other people who've gone through similar things and say, oh, they went through that, I can go through this. Like when I was 16 years old, I was hospitalized. I was at 5150. I was like over it, like, fuck it, I'm just going to give up. And that's something that a lot of teenagers go through, because especially when you're dealing with a lot of challenges, it's easier just to give up. And, I learned a lot from that. Obviously, I'm glad it didn't work out. I'm glad that I didn't end it all successfully.
Yeah.
But that's something where, we're all struggling with stuff. Even the people who've attained success still go through moments of weakness and self-doubt. And it's not something that's, if people are getting down on themselves, you just have to know that life is long and it gets easier. And if you treat the people around you with love and respect and kindness, you'll get that back in return. And we just got to look out for each other.
Well, that's the thing that we were talking about earlier before we started recording, which was the news that I was telling you about in Russia with the kids that died. And I wanted to talk about it by myself just because I wanted it to be clear. You get me? But it's actually better that it's with someone else, just to kind of gather opinions and put it out there. And it's just, so what happened, like I said before, I'll just say it again so people would know.
Yeah.
It was about 355 people that died. majority of those kids were majority of those fatalities were kids, and what happened was they were at a theater. I think it was like a trip or something, and what happens there, from what I was told, is they lock the doors because they don't want kids to sneak in that don't have tickets. So they locked the doors, and the people left. Certain people left. So as the kids were watching the theater, it caught up in flames, and the kids were trying to run out, but they were locked out. They were locked in. So one of the guys that was like security heard the alarm go off, and he dismissed it, and he turned the alarm off. He thought it was a false alarm, or it was a glitch. So he turns it off and he doesn't check. And then there's all the videos that come out of all these kids or people running out from the building, and it's all up in smoke. And it's just like the biggest takeaway for me was it wasn't covered as much. Like I said, I heard about that. I believe it was Monday night. It was like 11, 12, maybe 1-ish. And I was told about it because of who I'm connected with. But as I checked online and I was trying to figure out the story, I couldn't find anything about it. And then sadly enough, the way I found the videos were through Instagram. You just scroll down. I didn't search anything. I just scrolled down. I saw the video and I looked at it, and it's just something that you don't want to look at.
Right.
But then after I had a conversation with her, she told me that these fatalities happen, and that the parents couldn't gather the bodies of their children because the government wanted them to sign a non-disclosure agreement where they were not going to speak out of what exactly happened and how many people actually died. And the reason for that is so there wouldn't be an uproar against the government and against everything that's happened. And for me personally, it's sad because it doesn't look like we're going to cover it as much because it's on foreign soil, but it's a tragedy. It's children. You get me? And even if it was adults, it would still be tragedy. But it's kids. And I think that kids that haven't made decisions, they should be enjoying their childhoods, should be enjoying playing outside, hanging out with friends, learning, just being kids, have to go through something like that. Their parents have to go through something like that. And we just don't care because they're Russia. You get me? And it's sad because they're humans just like us, which is what I was telling you, that for me personally is like, I don't care what goes on with the government. It doesn't affect me personally. And if I was to travel to Russia, from what I know, they're just regular people just like we are. So I don't have any prejudice towards anybody. For me, is just how can I help my community? And then once I do that, how can I help everyone else?
Right. And how do we bring awareness to the larger issues that are affecting people that aren't getting covered? Because for a lot of the time, news is entertainment for people, and entertainers have an obligation to cater to what people want to watch. And a lot of times people don't want to hear that stuff because it bums them out. But we have to stay aware of what's going on. I mean, it's so great what's been happening in the past week with all these kids who are finding their own voice down in Florida in response to these shootings. Regardless of where you stand on the whole gun debate, those kids went through a traumatic experience, and now they're bringing awareness to the challenges that they're dealing with, and that can only be a good thing.
And they're standing up. The only problem I have with that is the kids should not have to do that.
Oh no,
they should not have to go out and march and protest and bring up these things. Whether you're a senior or in first grade, you're still in school.
For sure.
You're still in school where your main concern should be, did I get a homework? If you're a senior, am I going to graduate? What college am I going to go to? Am I going to go home, hang out with my friends? Like, that should be your only concern. Once you graduate, once you go to college, okay, the school's doesn't care about you. Now it's you having to care about yourself, but you're not an adult yet.
Right.
So that's the problem that I have personally, is that adults are not taking the right step forward to, yes, we're going to disagree on certain opinions, but let's have the conversation. Right. Let's have the decency to talk about some stuff. And you were asking me earlier about like who is my audience and what kind I'm tailored to, and what's my my subject kind of like the main thing. Why would people continue to come back? And I was going to tell you, I want to break this podcast up into maybe just a sports podcast, in like a segment or episodes, and then anime because I love anime, or films because I love movies, and then have the overall podcast that tailors them all in, maybe chimes in highlights of the week or whatever, or conversations like this, all in one. So then that way people that love sports would only listen to sports, and the people that love anime would go to that, or movies would go to that, or so on and so forth. But like you said, people don't like to listen to this because they get bummed out. But I think that as much as people that are entertainment, because this is technically entertainment, they have an obligation to kind of help the people for at least an hour escape the problems that are going on. And that's what conversations are for. That's what all this is for. But I think at certain times you need to have that real talk where it's like, hey, look, this is going on. We can't deny this. So it's a mixture of all the things. And hopefully people that listen to this and people that listen to you talk and they see the way that you work and they see the upcoming guests or me just speak, it's just like, hey, he's real. That's the biggest thing you can get. I'm not going to go on and say, hey, I like this just because that's the popular thing.
No, of course not. No, it's great that you do this and you have a forum where you could discuss lots of stuff, because it's, everybody, we all have multiple interests, and it's awesome that you have a way to deal with all of that together. I would say that, do you see Mary Poppins as a kid? So this old movie, but there's a great song, "A spoonful of sugar will help the medicine go down." And basically if we can be entertaining while also dealing with real stuff that needs to get talked about, then we're doing both things. You could provide a little bit of an escape, but also continue to have that conversation. And that's my larger goal. You asked me the question earlier about how do I go from making a documentary about nonprofits to going to USC Film School. And I realized that you have an opportunity. First, if you have the ability to make feature films and people are coming to watch something because you're going to entertain them, you also have this huge audience to potentially expose to new ideas and new ways of thinking if you could make it entertaining in the process. And that's the thing that I love and I want to continue focused on, is not don't spread awareness about good stuff, but figure out a way to sneak it in there, in the entertainment.
Make it positive.
Yeah.
So enough about all that stuff.
Yeah.
So where are you headed forward now? What are some goals that you want to achieve moving forward?
Yeah. So it's working in filmmaking. Unless you're really, really, really successful, you have to be able to have a marketable skill. So for me, the thing I do to get paid is I'm a cameraman. Essentially, I light scenes and I shoot scenes. And I work with directors to do, I'll do narrative work, I'll do music videos, commercials, documentaries, whatever is going to pay the bills. And I love that. That is a dream that I get paid to do that. But then I also have my own personal stories. So I made a feature documentary out in Detroit in 2012. It's on Amazon Prime right now and Stars for people who have cable, called 20 Years of Madness. And that was something that I directed. It was my idea.
Yeah.
It takes 3 years and a lot of money and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And my goal is to continue, in addition to shooting and being a cameraman and teaching cinematography at USC, also have my own personal projects that I can focus on if I can make a movie every 5 years, that would be great. So my next film, the screenplay that I'm currently working on, is fiction. And it's based on my time when I was a teenager, when I got caught up in, basically selling drugs, and how a kid who's sort of on the straight and narrow can go down this path, and how they could find themselves along the way, and what they learn, while also being, entertaining.
Yeah. Do you want to get the director? No, I wouldn't say writing, not necessarily writing, but just in charge of everything. Director, you get me?
Yeah, the director basically, they work with the actors. They work with everyone. Every department comes to them and says, hey, what are we doing? The director is the one with the vision.
Yeah.
They're the one communicating. It's like the coach on the basketball team.
Yeah.
The coach isn't actually shooting or passing or dribbling, but they're running everything. That's the director. So,
but is that what you want to do at the end? At the end of the day, is that the main goal?
That was the goal when I first set out to start making movies. I wanted to write and I wanted to direct. And that's still the goal, but that's not, I don't ever want that to be a job, because there's something that happens when you have a job. I love my job, but if you're doing something for the love of it, it's different than if you're doing it for the money. And the more you do it for the money, the more you're financially responsible for your family. You got to make decisions for like, you know, how do I pay the bills? And sometimes those decisions don't necessarily line up with what your soul wants.
Yeah.
So for me, having the chance to work in the industry, doing something that I do love, by shooting and being a cinematographer and paying the bills, while also having this thing that's going to nourish my soul, that I can focus on and use those same resources to do every like 5 years or so. That's really the goal. So I'm moving forward.
How was the Cassius Clay movie?
Yeah. So I got hired to shoot a documentary there's a museum in Louisville, Kentucky, where it's basically Muhammad Ali's childhood home where he grew up, and it came up for auction, I want to say like 4 years ago, and some investors decided to buy it and rehab the whole thing and turn it into, basically make it look the way it looked when he was a boy growing up there. So they found a vintage stove and old furniture and used photos to match everything and basically recreated his childhood home. And then at the end of the building, it had been expanded over the years. So there was an extra room, and they turned that room into sort of a small church style room with pews from the church that he went to and a big screen. And they commissioned a documentary about his childhood. So I shot that documentary out there, I think like 3 years ago. And then when he died, we went back and filmed again because they had the whole parade. And it went right in front of his house. So Will Smith was driving by, and obviously his family, his brother Rahman, who's amazing, was there, and he was like the main character of this documentary, walking us through the house, telling us stories. It was really cool. I mean, that's the great thing about my job, is often when I'm doing documentary stuff, you get to go and meet these incredible people and just hear them talk for hours.
So where can people see both of those? Oh, obviously you said that the first one, 20 Years of Madness, is on Amazon.
Yep. The Cassius Clay documentary is only available at the museum.
So you would have to go to Louisville.
Yeah, you'd have to go there. That's part of the appeal of the museum. So they're not going to release it online ever. But I think there might be a trailer. It's called the Muhammad Ali Childhood Museum.
And that should be like on YouTube or anything like that.
They should have some trailer or something online.
How did you get hired, I would say, or get involved at that?
It's a crazy thing, because there's a million people in this town who want to do this work. Yeah. For me, it started, I came to LA because I got accepted to USC, which is the best film school in the country, according to Hollywood Reporter, if that means anything. But it was a big deal when I got in. It was like, how could I make this work? So I moved to LA, and then it's just a really intensive program where you're with the same group of people. My fiance, who we've been dating for 8 years, we met in that program. It's really tight-knit. And then you go and you make a ton of movies. I probably shot 100 movies while I was there. And when you graduate, everybody that you're making movies with there goes out and does their own thing. Yeah. So you keep working with each other, but then you also meet new people, and those people hear, oh, I've got this project, you want to come out and help me. So then your network expands, and every year it gets bigger and bigger, and you work with, and hopefully you keep working with the people that you started working with. Last week, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, I shot a music video for a director who I've been working with for 7 years now, where he gets a new project, I shoot it for him. And that's great. Those are the jobs you really love, because again, you're working with your brothers and sisters. It's your community. You have it's like a family almost.
Those people you grew up in this industry with.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, we think of filmmaking as being really glamorous, but the truth is, when I work, it's a 12-hour day. You show up to set at 9, you're not going to leave till 9:30. And it's manual labor, what I do. So if you're going to spend 12 hours a day, 5 days a week in this grind with all this stress and all this money on the line, you want to make sure the people you're spending that time with are people you like to be around. Because
you don't want it to be something where you don't want to be there that extra day.
Right.
It might take that extra day to get it right.
Sure. I mean, it won't, first of all, because they won't have the money for the extra day.
Yeah.
It'll be predetermined that you only have this many days, which is going to make it even more stressful. And if you don't like the people you're working with, that's just going to make you miserable.
Yeah. So how is teaching at USC compared to everything else?
Teaching's great. So I teach cinematography. I think there are about 20 teachers at USC teaching cinematography. And I'm by far the youngest. Most teachers are in their 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
So part of it was when I was there, I saw a lot of room for improvement in the way the curriculum was structured.
Yeah.
And I'm not shy about telling people
how things should go.
Yeah. So I polled my peers and kind of came up with a survey of what was working, what wasn't working, put all that info together and put it into a package to take to the dean to say, hey, I was about to graduate. Yeah. So it wasn't going to benefit me, but I was hoping, how do I benefit the next group of people coming through? And I took it to the person who runs the cinematography track. I was just like, can you look this over before I go to the dean? And she's like, why don't you hold off for a minute? Because at this point, she wasn't the track head. She was just another teacher. She was my mentor.
Yeah.
And about a year later, she's like, hey, so I'm running the program now.
Let me see it.
I want to make it better.
Yeah.
So why don't you come in and let's do this together? So that was the mission. And ever since then, I've been teaching now for 3 years there. And it's amazing. I teach mostly undergrads. So 20, 21, 22-year-olds who are super hungry.
Towards the tail end of their, you would say, college career.
It's usually their last class.
Yeah, and then they're off to the races.
This is the last class before they get out from the umbrella of school. I have a whole lecture just on how do you get a job in the industry, because nobody wants to talk about that. We talk about the theory and the art, but you don't talk about how do I go out and get a job. And it's great because they really appreciate someone who's been through it, being up there. People who've been through it recently, because also a lot of the technology's changed,
That's what I was going to tell you. When you would come up to your peers and you would figure out that they're all older than you and you're, hey, this is the new kid on the block with the new ideas. This is what I see. How reluctant were they to accept some of those changes?
I think in general, they were all really happy to hear any feedback. A lot of them I'd either had as teachers myself or I'd been their teaching assistant. So there was already a relationship there. But also, I try not, I don't just walk in and say, hey, this is how it has to get done. I was trying to be respectful and accommodating, because they also have 20, 30 years of experience that I don't have. So there's a lot to be learned from them. I'm not going to act like I know everything. Yeah, exactly. I just know I have a couple ideas of how things could get better. And I want to learn from them about their approach. So that's been the big goal, is bring in a little bit of change while also learning how to do because it's hard to be a teacher, and they could teach me a lot about how to be a teacher. Yeah, so.
Exactly. Who would you say was your biggest inspiration for getting this far along? Obviously, we could say the fiance, and that would be nice because he's going to hear this, but there has to have been someone who's pushed you to that point, because for me personally, this right here you could inspire someone you've never met before. You get me? So when I take this into consideration, when I coach or when I talk to someone, I personally don't like being a role model, because I see my own flaws every day.
Sure, yeah.
And so when I speak to someone, I always err with caution of like, hey, look, don't look at me for inspiration. Look at yourself first, and then take pieces from all the people that you've met. But if I had to be real, I know exactly, okay, this person is like the one who gave me that little extra push in the ass and got me over the hump. So who would you say, whether it could be a student, it could be someone from the trip, who would you say would have, maybe when you were down, it gave you that extra push?
It's hard because there have been so many. I've been really lucky to have like a lot of great people in my life. In fact, if anything, it's more different phases of my life. I've had different people who've played that role for me. So when I was in school, probably Linda Brown, the track head, who was there and really encouraged me to keep going when I wanted to possibly not even go to film school, because it's really expensive. I'm like, I could be using this money to do something different. She kept me in, and then her giving me the opportunity to teach is a big, like, trusting me, putting me in a position where she's putting her neck on the line. That was huge. And it also elevates you, because you realize this is not just about me. This is about me representing someone else who hired me. So that was huge. When I was a teenager, I ended up moving in with my aunt and uncle for a while, and they both got college educations, because my mom and dad didn't get college degrees. So them saying, hey, this is important, you should go for this. You can go for this. First of all, you're entitled to this if you think you can do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't paying for it, but they were encouraging me to do that. That was great because, going and getting a bachelor's degree, it's not necessary for everyone. But for me, it exposed me to a lot of different things and expanded my mind, and also exposed me to a lot of different people, people from across the world, people from across the country, different perspectives, because as much as it's important to be a part of the community, it's also important to not be insular, you know, and surround yourself with other people.
Yeah.
So that was really important. And then in my 20s, my first job was as an editor. And the guy who hired me, Eric Tierman, he went to film school in the 70s, started his own company, and grew it. When I started working for him, it was like him and 2 other people. And by the time I left, there was like a company of 16 people.
Yeah.
And I got to see that transformation. And he trusted me to, again, represent his company and do work. And he really encouraged me to, like, he's the one who sort of showed me, oh, you could make this a career.
Yeah.
This could be more than a hobby. And then, of course, I have artistic inspirations. You know?
When it comes to maybe people you haven't met, but that you listen to.
I mean, playing basketball, I was 230 pounds 2 years ago. Kobe Bryant retired. And on the night that Kobe Bryant retired, because we're like the same age, I was like, damn, he's got this career. And here I am, some fat guy who hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to go play basketball, because I loved basketball as a teenager and then didn't play for like 15 years. So when Kobe Bryant retired, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get into basketball. And that's what brought me to the court.
That's how we met. Yeah. That was something I was going to ask you, is like, how does this path seems like it's very rigorous. It feels like there's maybe not enough time to kind of explore and do other things just because you're so focused into what you're doing. Like, how does basketball come in and tie it up?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. For a while there, my entire world was film. You know, you go to school, you do film, you go watch movies on the weekends, you hang out with your friends who are in film school. Everything is film. And it ends up becoming kind of, you can get really stuck.
Yeah.
And a big part of what we do is, like, it's not just about the work, it's about being inspired. And also about taking care of yourself, because when you're working crazy hours and then you just want to have a drink when you get off or whatever, and then you don't take care of your body the same way, or you eat too much or whatever, I realized that having some sort of physical outlet does two things. First, it makes you healthy, a healthy human being, physically, but also it gives you these opportunities to interact with people who, again, you may not run into. And I'm a big believer of, like, invest in your community. That's why when I moved to this neighborhood, I started going to Queen Anne. I didn't go to the court I was playing at before. Yeah. Because I'm a part of this city now. So let's be a part of the city. So the other side is that, you meet all sorts of people like Kenny and Ronald and Mario and DJ and, Richard and all of the, friends, the kids at the park. Like, I consider those people friends too, even though the main interaction we have is on the court for 2-3 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week. It still makes me happy to run into them and have that connection. Yeah,
a lot of it that I'm trying to do now is just, like, for example, I love the UFC. Like, the UFC thing for me is, like, everyone knows that. So if there's times where Ronald has some time, someone has some time, hey, look, we're going to Coney's, someplace that I discovered because of a friend of mine, a really great friend who's actually been on the podcast, and it's just like, hey, look, you have some time, come down. It gives us the people that we've met through the court to now have an extra connection outside. They're eating, talking, telling stories, having fun, watching the fights, doing this, doing that. And then from there, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe we can do this, or we could go bowling or do that, or whatever it is. But it's just strengthening that bond that we've already had. So anytime that you have time, if you like the UFC, head down. We're
cool,
there.
Man. Thanks.
Actually, this next card that's coming up is April 7th. It's going to be a great card. We've been waiting for it. I kind of wish it was this weekend, but I have to wait another week. So before we wrap all this up, I have one question that I really want to know. And the reason why I'm asked this is just because I don't want people to think that it's all fine and dandy. We are human. What's something that you fear? You get me? Like, what's like the biggest fear? Obviously, maybe not hitting the deadline.
No, that wouldn't be a big fear.
But
no.
it's like the fear of moving forward. For me personally, taking this big jump of leaving my old job and having to find something new is tremendously out of character for me. The podcast was one of those things where people are like, "Oh, I couldn't see you do that." But for me, it was something that was in my realm, just because I love to speak.
Yeah, and you're good at it.
And thank you. I love storytelling, and I love hearing. I love trying to portray something. I love trying to help people. But for me, the biggest thing was leaving where I was at, where I was in my comfort zone,
right,
and having to find something new, because we have bills, we have expectations, we have a future life that we have to continue to live. But for what's something that you want people to know? Hey, look, this is something that I fear, and it's okay for us to have some of this feeling, because every day we try to defeat it.
Sure, yeah. No, and first, I just want to say that I think it's awesome that you're talking about your situation, because, we all go through ups and downs. We'll all have jobs and lose jobs, and have partners or relationships and lose relationships. So it's important that we talk about that stuff too. So I thought it was really courageous of you to bring it up in the last podcast.
That's why I said it's like it's out of my comfort zone for sure.
Which is good. One thing I say all the time is the only real growth that happens in life happens through vulnerability. If you refuse to make yourself vulnerable, you don't grow, because you don't risk anything. And we can't gain anything if we're not risking anything. So that level of vulnerability is really, really important. Not that we should all, air everything all the time. Of course, there's a right way to do it in an appropriate place. And I think this is a great place that you've created for people to talk about stuff. For me, my biggest fear, honestly, probably for a long time, it would have been like, I can't pay the bills, I lose my house, whatever. Yeah. I've learned over the years that the universe, God, whatever, tends to provide for you. I mean, I could pull up a photo right now on my phone where I had 3 cents in my checking account, no money in my savings account, literally no idea how I was going to survive. And the next day I get hired to shoot a $5,000 gig.
And you're back on it.
And you're back on it. And you just can't, if you're there and you're ready, opportunities will present themselves. So I'm less worried about the money stuff on that level. But really speaking, I fear that my career, because this is hard, it's a hard career, and you have to make sacrifices, and with every opportunity you take, you're going to be turning down another opportunity. Yeah. I fear that I would never be able to have kids as a result of following my dream. That is one very real possibility, because growing up in poverty, I said I would never raise kids if I couldn't provide them with, the basic stuff. So I look forward to getting to a place where I can do what I love, continue to give back, take care of myself, and also be able to have a family.
The biggest thing. I mean, all this stuff is nice. You want to have someone that you can teach on, like, that's part of you. You get me? For me, it's just like, that's why right now is helping these kids out, finding a good job, and so on and so forth. But I have that same fear as well. It's just, for me, I'm not at that point yet.
Right, because you're much younger, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like, I can see exactly why you would say that. For me personally, I've seen people go through that, and I look, and just so I won't say names, I know someone who's really successful in his own right and has money, and it's just, it didn't happen. You get me? And it might not happen. If it's going to happen, it'll happen, and when it's ready. I just think that it's something different for everyone else, and that's yours, and everyone has those fears. And
they change over time too. Like, different parts of your life, you may have different fears, different hopes, different dreams.
Is it something that you've already spoken with your fiance? Like,
Oh, for sure, because she's in the same boat as me. That's the thing, is we both on our own had stable 9-to-5 regular paycheck jobs. And we both know that that's an option. And we both know it'd be easier if only one of us was chasing this crazy dream and the other person had a stable job. But neither of us is going to ask that of the other person. So we are both chasing the same crazy dream, and we both don't have the stability to make it happen.
To make it work, yeah.
And the truth is, some months are great and we're up here and we're always good. Yeah. But in terms of like buying a house, like, we're not at that level yet. And once one of us really breaks through to the next level, then we can bring the other person up. But one of us has to break through, and right now we only have time to hustle. We do not have time to raise kids.
Yeah, so. And then, man, you're smart. We're all. I mean, it's all about guidance. You get me? So anyone that's my age, anyone that's younger, it's all about having that guidance and having that intellect of saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me go ahead and imply that to my life. I, for one, have met many people that have had kids at very young ages, and it's just something for me that it's baffling. It's something that I can't imagine how they make it work. I'm happy that they made it work.
Right.
You wouldn't, like I said, it's important to help kids out. The reason why I coach is because I don't want kids to feel the way that I felt, like where there's no one to help. But it's like, man, if you're not ready, you shouldn't do it. You get me?
Well, and that's the thing too. It's just really selfish. What I want to do with my life is selfish. I want to make art, which is unnecessary. It's not feeding anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could make an argument that it's
Inspiring.
beneficial, sure, but it's not. If I stop making art, it's not going to really. People are going to continue to live. If I have kids, I can't justify like going and making crazy art or whatever instead of providing food and shelter for my child. That's the first and foremost thing, which means I'm going to have to sacrifice those dreams.
Yeah.
Or maybe everything works, but I don't want to put myself in that position where I have to make that decision. I would rather wait until I already have a leg in, a foot in the door in the big scale. Cause there's lots of different levels of
independent films and everything moving forward. Well, I mean, everyone has fears. So you have yours, whether you being a USC teacher, whether being a successful film director or shooting films, whether it's a great basketball player, whether it's a great friend, whether it's a great community member. We all have fears. You get me? And it's good for everyone to hear that. Hey, look, you have someone new that you can talk to. You have someone new that you can go and ask for help, and you won't have all the answers, but at least you'll help out in a sense. You get me?
Also, those fears are fuel. Because those fears are what push us forward in the direction we need to go. So fear and being real about it is not a bad thing. It is, the more we accept it and acknowledge it, the more we can let it drive us in the direction that we need to go.
Yeah. So, do you have a website, jeremyroyce.com?
Yeah, www.jeremyroyce.com.
And all your work is on there, at least the current work?
The recent work, yeah. So there's a section for music videos, commercials, narrative stuff. A lot of it I didn't direct, some of it I did, but there's some good stuff on there.
And then anything else that people could figure out more about you, anything like that, projects?
I mean, I'm a huge fan of, like, I'm not on Instagram or Twitter, but I'm on Facebook. My page is open to anybody, so if somebody wants to hit me up on Facebook, I'm down.
And no YouTube stuff, nothing?
No, I got a lot of the videos that are on my website are on Vimeo. And there's some stuff on YouTube, but not right now.
Okay. So anyone that would like to hit up Jeremy, you could do that on the website, send emails, Facebook, through me, whatever it is.
Or come to Queen Anne Park between 11 and 2 in the afternoons, or 6:30 to 9:30 at night.
Exactly. Unless you're too good, because I already got a bump bruise. You get me from yesterday. Still
you just
hurts.
Can't play defense with Mauricio.
Yeah, don't jab step in. Easy. Yeah, I fell and I was bleeding. I was bleeding pretty bad. And then listen. It'll be up on iTunes today. We'll put it up on iTunes. If you don't have an iPhone, download like Podcast Addict or Stitcher. It should be up there. Right when it goes up, it'll be up there. As long as the camera didn't die, video will be up on YouTube today. We'll see how it goes. And hopefully you come back on and we'll talk about your avenues and things that you're doing moving forward.
Sure.
Talk about more personal stuff, more stories. You get me, sports. When we do the basketball segments, hopefully you come on and we'll talk just
hopefully
sports.
Clippers will make it to the playoffs. We'll be able to talk about them in a month.
Yeah,
probably not a lot of Clippers fans out there, but
no, listen. So the guy that I told you that was on, his name's Tovar. He works at the park. He's a huge Clipper fan.
Oh, good.
So just hearing that, if he made it this far, whenever he listens to this, he'll be like, another Clipper
We're
fan.
still in it. We're still in it, man.
Yeah. I'm upset that Avery Bradley's with the Clippers. I don't think that the Celtics should have ever traded him.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to make moves to get better players. We needed another point guard. So the appropriate moves happen. So hopefully they sign them and
we'll come back on and we'll talk more basketball next time.
Yeah. We'll see. just let me know when you're free, and we'll reschedule something.
Thanks, brother.
Moving forward. Thank you, sir. All right, that's a wrap. Thank you, guys. Thank you for listening. Again, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, the website, whyevencarepodcast.com, YouTube, Why Even Care Podcast, Instagram, Why Even Care Podcast, Twitter, Why Even Care PC, Why Even Care PC. And, subscribe, spread the word. Thank you for listening.